Hello beautiful people, and welcome to this Samhain presentation. We do tend to think of Samhain as Halloween and celebrate on October the 31st, but actually astrologically it happens at 15 degrees of Scorpio, which this year is about 4 a.m. on the morning of Friday the 7th. Weirdly, is exactly 3 years since I started doing my daily astrology tip. And if you don't know anything about that and you're not following it, then do get in touch, and I can put the the QR code at the end of this video. You can join the WhatsApp group where I post it every day. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and let you look at the chart, which is drawn up for the moment of Samhain, exactly 15 degrees. Before I do that, I'll just explain that I am walking along the Macclesfield Canal in Macclesfield, and this is definitely one of the most beautiful sections of the Macclesfield Canal. You can see beyond this bridge where the Peak District rises out of the Cheshire Plain. So I'll just stop for a moment and I'll come back after you've seen the chart. If you're familiar with astrology, then obviously you're going to have a good look at the astrology. If you're not familiar with astrology or looking at an astrology chart, just rest your eyes on it and get a feeling for it. Does it feel peaceful? Does it feel stressful? Etc. So, of course, the main thing that we still have going on is the SoulStar portal, which, if you don't know anything about, I have already done a few videos about this. The first one was my summer solstice video, so I highly recommend that you go into my YouTube channel and find that video. And the subsequent presentations have all been about the SoulStar portal too. So the SoulStar portal is formed by the 4 slowest moving planets in our solar system, particularly the 3 slowest, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, which I call the 3 gods. And they are what are called transpersonal or spiritual planets. And they've been connected to each other for just over a year now. This is unusual. The last time this happened in this same dynamic was in 1945. So we're having an unusual opportunity, and it's going to last for 4 years. So I've talked quite a lot about how these 3 planets all moved from earth and water signs, where they were in up until this time last year, and they all moved into air and fire signs in the spring of this year. Now that's very different energy. You know, earth and water is like mud, And air and fire, it's more like fireworks. However, as you probably are aware, planets have a habit of going retrograde, and these outer planets go retrograde every year, and they all but Pluto, which, as you know, moved into Aquarius for good this time last year. But the other two, Uranus and Neptune, have both moved back into, well, let's say Uranus will be moving back on Saturday, the day after Samhain. They both moved back into the earth and water signs that they were in before. Now, all the planets except for the sun and the moon will have a retrograde motion. And some people get quite freaked out about retrogrades. Think just everything is going backwards. It's not really like that. It's more that it's almost like I've been walking forward and now I'm going to walk back again because maybe there was something I missed along the path. Maybe there was a beautiful bush or a tree or a plant or something that I didn't take notice of at the time. And this gives me an opportunity to have a good look at it again before we set off forward again. So we've had all three in air and fire signs over the summer, and you've probably noticed that everything, well, maybe you didn't, but things really speeded up. It's like everything became quite frenetic. I don't know if you noticed, but we had a very long summer. In fact, I would say, judging by the temperature, that we're still in summer. Even though the trees have changed colours, it's still very warm. And we've had this warm weather since about March. And as an animal species, we tend to be more active when the weather's warmer. And I've seen a lot of people who are really tired now because ideally the temperature in the old days, the temperature would have significantly dropped by now, and we would be retreating into our homes as the evenings get darker, sitting around fires and getting cozy. But it still feels like summer in a way. And so people are still out and about, they're still sitting outside pubs, they're still, going off on long walks and cycle rides, and our nervous system isn't quite set up for this. So I think this retrograde back into the earth and water is giving us an opportunity to reconnect with our physical bodies and also our emotional bodies. Because I think during the summer these have been slightly neglected. We've just sort of gone, hey, wow, it's amazing, it's so warm and sunny and hot, let's just go. And it's just been push, 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 drive, 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 run, 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 which our nervous systems really struggle with. And once we go back into air and fire next spring, that's going to be it then. And so this is almost our last opportunity, well, not the last opportunity, but it is a great opportunity for us to take some time and reflect on what it is that our bodies need. How are we going to change? How are we going to adjust the way that we are living in order to accommodate these new changes? Nature has to accommodate the increasing temperature, but equally, we need to accommodate the increasingly fast energies that we are going to be subjected to under this air and fire regime, if you like. And I don't think it's bad, not at all. I just think that we need to learn how to change the way that we operate in order to take things slower, to accomplish tasks in a shorter period of time, not so that we can get more tasks done, but so that we can take more leisure time, more rest time, more time to just be present and be still. And with Uranus going back into Taurus, which is very much about our physical bodies, our material existence, our material reality, our money, our values, this is going to give us a really great opportunity to review the past 6 months or so and go, okay, so am I burnt out? What have I learnt? And what do I need to change in order to acclimatise myself better to what is coming? So Neptune and Saturn has been associated with Neptune now for quite a while, but it will be moving off on its own again in the spring because it moves much faster than Neptune. Neptune and Saturn have returned to Pisces. Now Neptune's at home in Pisces, it likes Pisces, but Saturn doesn't particularly. Saturn's all about boundaries, and Neptune and Pisces have no boundaries. So there's this weird thing going on there. And we did a lot of work last year about how to work with boundaries. Because personally, as an artist, I believe that boundaries are fantastic for creativity. You know, it's a bit like you take a photograph, you've got a boundary of a rectangular screen, and somehow you have to get whatever it is that you want to photograph nicely positioned in that rectangular screen. If you had no rectangular screen, if it was just unlimited, then you'd be humming and hawing. Should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? Where shall I put the subject? Da, 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 da. It's just too much choice. So when we have a boundary, like artists, you know, will have a canvas or a certain number of colours or a certain number of materials. I'm going to walk back the other way because I'm just about to run out of canal before we hit a road. So boundaries can be really, really helpful. Our body is a boundary, our skin is a boundary. Our physical limitations are a boundary. And it's really important that we know what our boundaries are, what our physical limitations are, how much sleep we need, what kind of food we work best with, whether we're capable of, running a mile or whatever. We need to understand what our physical boundaries are, and then within those boundaries, look for how free we can be. I hear much older people than me, or people who have limited mobility, say, well, I can't do anything anymore, and I can't do what I used to do. Well, no, we're all getting older, and most of us can't do what we used to do. However, we can still do something. And what I often say to people is, okay, so when you were more able, what was it you liked to do? So say they like to go off and have a bit of an adventure. And I say, what was it about the adventure that was most significant to you, that was most important to you, that really made that important for you? And it could be anything, couldn't it? But let's say it was being by the sea or something like that. And I say, well, okay, so maybe you can't drive to the sea anymore. Maybe you can't walk by the sea anymore. However, you could still take a bus to the sea. You could still go and sit by the sea. You could still have that experience of the sea within the new limitations that your body or life is imposing. So if you feel like that your life is becoming limited in some way, that you can't do what it is that you'd really love to do, you don't feel free to do that, then look at what it is that you would really like to do. What is it about that that gives you the most pleasure and satisfaction? And then see how you can get that in a different way. So you're using your creative mind. You're creating something different. You're creating a new experience for yourself. And then life becomes joyful and full and rich. I think rich is a really good word. Taurus is often about money and abundance and our values. And we tend to associate rich with money or luxury. But actually rich is such a richer word than that. It's such a bigger word than that. It's about how to make life meaningful. How to fill it with beauty. For me, that's my personal thing. And joy. So I've been drawn to these leaves now 3 times. These give me a sense of richness. We can find this everywhere. We only have to step outside of our front doors. So I'm going to turn around again because somebody else is walking towards me. So over the winter, we need to be really looking at how we're going to support our physical environment, particularly our bodies and our living environment, and maybe even our incomes, our values, how we're going to support those to carry us through the next few years where the energy is going to speed up. Think about, I don't know if you've ever used ChatGPT or AI, and how quickly it can just write an essay, for example. Give it a few inputs. Yeah, how quickly it can write an essay, given a few inputs. And in a way, that's what's happening to life. It's like everything is becoming so fast, but the temptation then is to fit more in. And that is not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be using that extra bit of space, that extra bit of time to just be present and allow our nervous systems to stabilize. Okay, I think that's probably the most important thing that I have to tell you for this presentation. Every day I do a little tip, and there's always more to add to this. And this, I think, is a foundation, is a base point that really has to be settled, grounded, put into practice, become part of our daily habit and routine, a new way of working. Remember, we're all evolving, we're all becoming lighter. Energy is quantum leaping, and this is unprecedented. We've never been through anything like this before. It's all completely new. And we just need to take some time to let it settle and to become integrated. Okay, so I love you all, and talk to you soon. Bye. Oh, a little PS. I just realised that some of you might be wondering about, the fact that at this time of year, the veil between the worlds becomes very thin, and how does that relate to what's going on at the moment? If you know anything about quantum physics or quantum mechanics, you know that we live in a multi-dimensional reality, that there are parallel universes, and that we can move between them. You know when you get deja vu? It's a bit like you've moved into a parallel experience. Because you've probably heard, that every decision you make, part of you goes one way and the other part goes the way that you are aware of. I've always wondered, why do we experience this reality so strongly and not others? And I read recently it's because this one is going to offer us the greatest learning opportunities, the greatest opportunities to evolve. However, what I'm noticing is that it is becoming increasingly easy to move into parallel realities. I think a lot of us have been practicing this when we're imagining how we see the future being. And I'm saying that as a linear concept, but it's not really like that. Because there's no such thing really as linear time. Everything's happening at the same time. And so what we envisage in the future is actually what we are envisaging for a parallel reality, and it already exists. So the more that we imagine and envision, then the more that we allow ourselves to move into that parallel reality. And it can have whatever it is that we desire. A lot of us struggle, with having, say, more money. The reason that we don't move into that parallel reality, which contains more money, is because of all our own internal blocks and beliefs and all that sort of stuff. You can only really move into a parallel reality if you truly are open to being there, and there's nothing resisting you moving in. And this time of year is a brilliant time of year. Well, to tell you the truth, I think that we are now permanently moving into a parallel realities. I believe that we are creating a new earth reality. And that this facility is going to be one of the things that really emerges over the next 4 years with this SoulStar portal. But in order to do that, you have to have some downtime. You can't just be rushing around all the time, because while we're rushing around, we're just in our mental level. We're just, head down, focused on what needs doing next. It's only when we stop and breathe and give ourselves a bit of space that we can imagine something different, and we can allow ourselves to cross through that veil. So there we go. That was the little bit extra I wanted to add. Okay, love you all.